Hello and welcome to this Mobalytics video, and in it we will be investigating the best roles for you to main in every ELO for Season 10. My name is Virakayu, I will be your host. So far in the videos that I've narrated with Mobalytics, we have looked at maining a champion and why it's so helpful to climb and pick your mains and how many you should have. We've also looked at which champions you should main for each particular role. We've even looked at what roles dominate in the highest ELOs of the game in the Challenger ladder. What we haven't looked at though is what roles you should actually main depending on your MMR. Now let's just get off the bat and say the most realistic goal for any player in the game once they're climbing, is to reach Diamond. When you switch a role, when you pick a champion, when you begin ranked, this is what you're looking to get to. And because once you reach that, you're looking to go up to Masters Plus, it can be a very good indicator and general guide for which roles perform best in a general sense. So I don't think it comes as much surprise that we are going to rank it as mid and jungle being the top 2 roles, followed by support and ADC, and then followed by top. Now before everyone starts raging about how top has no impact and it's a terrible role, wait until the end of the video and then reassess what you think about it. Now obviously this is a very heavy snowball meta. We have dragons, and as soon as you get the first one, everyone thinks, okay, 3 more until the dragon soul win condition, and the enemy team goes, we lost a dragon, oh no. And then everyone starts fighting over making sure they get those objectives. We also have 2 heralds, the first one that spawns at 8 minutes, and I really think it is being woefully underused. But the point of me saying this is that mid lane has really turned into a roaming role. It's always been the best way to play mid lane, but the thing is, you don't really need to win lane straight up anymore. And when high elo junglers, especially those Diamond Plus, Masters Plus even more so, start complaining about their laners, is because if I don't beat the enemy jungler 1v1, for whatever reason I am the weaker 1v1 jungler. However, I really do wish I could get a Scuttle Crab for my birthday. The downtrodden experience and gold gains, even though they were just buffed, I just really could use that extra crab. The vision would be nice for counter jungling, and it would give me accessibility to ganking lanes. But oh no, my mid laner is shoved in and here comes the Talon and I'm dead. The mid lane with Prio controls the jungle impact if the jungler is also good. And once you start getting into the Diamond and Master Plus and Challenger ELOs, this is exactly what happens. When you create Prio either through just stomping lane or having a champion that can shove and roam, you get to hold hands and dance around the map with your jungler. Invade buff, sneak dragons when the other junglers on the top side. Maybe conduct a 4-man gank on the bottom lane. You know, ADCs just love it when there's 1,000 people around and they can't auto-attack everyone at once. And even if you don't have lane Prio as a jungler, you can still impact lanes heavily early. Use good side lane ganking routes, lane ganks, tower dives, unique angled ganks over walls if you're a RedMercy Lee. If you have the right meta pick, you can make the enemy jungler absolutely useless, and so the enemy team gets no ganks in their favor, thus basically eliminating a player from the game. And so the synergy from a mid and jungle perspective is really and ultimately what controls the early game macro and controls early game objective focus. Obviously a jungler can do this without the mid lane having Prio, especially if the enemy mid laner roams to the other side of the map, but that's why they're the 2 most important roles. And next up we have support, and that's because basically a good support can control the bottom lane, and the bottom lane can be a very snowbally matchup when you are simply more skilled at the role. A better support matchup can definitely win a lane, and when we say all these things, remember it's in the context of being Diamond Plus. And I'll get back into that when we go through the other MMR ranges, but needless to say, once you've won that lane and you can snowball it very nicely, the support acts as a second roamer. You can easily go up and invade with your jungler. Zyra is still one of my most played champions and I love playing a support and always have. The way you do it is by controlling the minion wave, getting a push on, getting a kill perhaps, and immediately you can invade Groms for your kindred mark. You can invade the 2nd tier blue buff to deny the Elise. When your ADC goes back to base just because they must have that BF sword, they can't continue to exist without it, you can simply roam to the mid lane if you don't have to return. Make a gank there if your jungler's been suppressed. Maybe the 3 of you can now become a goon squad and roam the map. The point is, if you can win lane and roam, that's a heavy early game win condition, can really set you up for mid game success. Now ADC here is in the 4th spot, and we've said this because it's more reliant on your team. Especially when every new ADC has something else that the others don't, and I still don't know what Aphelios does, I just usually end up dying. But also the ADC power spike is very much in objective and tower control, and the fact that enemies cannot dodge auto attacks. And the later the game goes, the more powerful those auto attacks become with itemization, and all of a sudden the Vayne you've been laughing at for 25 minutes because of Vayne spotting, she's 2 and 10, starts popping off and gets a pentakill. But you really do need to have your team help you get there. You're not going to be super strong early. However, there's a lot to be said about a bot lane winning lane and getting that lead themselves, but it's less obvious in MMRs where the mid and jungle have so much map control. Now top lane is a very important role. The fact that Sirhc and Sono showing up and just roaming and pressing R while doing nothing else whatsoever, not having any skill, my sincere apologies to those who play it, it's true. But at the same time, it illustrates a very core point of top lane that they don't seem to understand. You cannot expect to win the game because you won lane. That's not how the game works. You also have to consider simple geography. You are top lane, your proximity is to Herald. Unfortunately, Dragon is the win condition, and so there is more emphasis on the bottom lane. But also a fed ADC melts towers and melts objectives, so it's more useful having them being fed also. However, remember, this is in the context of Diamond Plus. Top lane doesn't have that much impact because junglers, mid laners, supports know where the priors are to win the game. They have the best geographical situation to those objectives, and in that sense, the map is very lopsided to the Dragon side, and Riot will have to figure out a way to help our top lane brothers by giving those who do win lanes some kind of way of actually carrying the rest of the map. Now that's for Diamond Plus, a good indicator of general map impact. When streamers complain, when people are tweeting about this is essentially the framework under which they talk. This isn't the case for every single ELO, so let's jump all the way back down to the bottom. Let's talk about Bronze and Iron. What exact roles should you be maining if you are in fact Bronze and Iron? In the Diamond section, it was a very clear cut. Mid and jungle number 1, support ADC number 2, and then in a third tier by itself, top lane. But here we're putting it down in Bronze and Iron, mid lane, top lane, jungle, support, and then ADC. Let me explain. The reason ADC is last year is just because it's the hardest role. It requires a lot of good positioning, a lot of understanding of auto spacing depending on the champion you're playing. A lot of the time, low elo players will not know how to peel or when to peel, so you really will have to focus on doing that yourself. It's harder to kite, harder to stay alive, and everyone in this elo plays damage, which means you're going to have a Rengar, even if he doesn't know exactly how to play it, simply jump and kill you. You're gonna have an Evelynn flank and kill you. Why? Because they can and because you're always by yourself. On the other hand, mid and top lane, these are the solo lanes. Top is better just because you can outplay 1v1 more. The game isn't as snowbally around the rest of the map because people don't know how to abuse leads. They have almost zero objective focus at this stage, and you can very easily win by split pushing or simply dominating your lane early with a Renekton level 3 Ignite play. And once you do that, they're not going to show the restraint and safety necessary in that lane. You should be able to get a lot more kills, get a few level leads, get all tower plates, and then you as a top laner can very easily split or go down to the Herald or go down to the mid lane. It's almost like the game is just waiting for you to get a lead and then you can take control of it. The same can be said for mid lane, which is why these two are the most powerful in Bronze and Iron. Support, on the other hand, we did mention is a great roamer, but supports rely a lot on the ADC in this elo. It's sort of like a tandem, two halves of a coin, and their roaming is probably either not good or non-existent. Jungle is just really middle of the road. You can gank and have impact, but a lot of the camp sequencing, a lot of the pathing, and I've done some coaching on this, is very lazy. It's just inexperienced. Jungle is a very much an experienced role. It takes time to learn all these things when you're new to the game and new to the role. And no, Tyler 1 doesn't count. He spammed 1,000 games in one day, and he's a challenger player, so he has a lot of game knowledge that he can rely on. The ganking mechanics from junglers in this elo just aren't very good, and the picks are very greedy, and they don't understand the win condition of their champion. Now let's go on to Platinum. Silver. I'm sorry, just throwing you a little shade there, Platinum friends. Don't worry, I know there's green in your emblem. And based upon the statistics we looked at, as well as personal anecdotes and coaching and everything like that, as we take our journey through the ELOs and the MMRs, you're going to see that certain roles go up and down with their importance. And that's because every MMR has a different importance and a different win condition that will suit certain roles better than others. And this adaptation and growth is essentially what you need as you climb and what builds up your experience base. So in the first group, we have, once again, jungle and mid, except this time jungle first and then mid. And in the second group, we have top, support, and ADC. The reason for this is jungle simply has the best win rates in silver. It overtakes mid. Junglers get better at their pathing, they get better at knowing what clears to use, they start to understand certain matchups, they get very better at following up ganks a bit more from the laner perspective. But when laners understand how to follow up ganks or what a gank actually is, and the jungler is focused on doing that, it just becomes a more powerful role because the impact is felt in every single lane. And if you have that invade alpha jungle style that wants to obliterate the enemy jungle from existence, you like to gank lanes because crying laners are the thing that fuel you through the night, and dragons are simply the thing you dream about and make you smile, this is the beginnings of where you start to understand that. And most importantly, early pressure and leads are king in this MMR. Why? Because everyone tilts and gives up way too soon, and they just think every game is lost as soon as they are behind. Again, this is why mid is also good in this MMR, especially if you can win your lane and help your jungle do those things, but top lane is still a very win-hard lane. The diminishing effects that everyone talks about is only, again, Diamond Plus. You do not feel it in Silver because if you are the better laner, you will be able to use your advantage more to win the game. Roam, help the map. You are not an AFK farming jungler. You cannot complain about the Shyvana not ganking if you're simply going to stay in your top lane and not affect the map with your lead. If you lose the game as a level 14 Renekton while everyone else is level 9, I guarantee you it's because you didn't use it properly. You're basically as useful as a level 1 Renekton and a belt, and then you should smack yourself with it for not actually using your lead. However, support and ADC are actually pretty close to top lane in impact because ADC starts to actually win games. The win rate for this role starts to climb in silver quite notably. But with easier to play ADCs, think your Ashes and your Jinxes, not exactly running around trying to learn Aphelios' 3000 Q combo, or understanding how to position, dive, and peel with Kai'Sa while you actually want to use your lead. Essentially, once you start to be able to win lanes with the easier ADCs, you begin to snowball with the Jinx. You begin to hit your Ashe arrows and start to chase them down with a relenting Q that seemingly never ends. Instead of shooting your arrow to the left side of Summoner's Rift, which probably ends up on the TFT map, you can actually begin to win games because you become somewhat useful. You actually start to do damage, and honestly, it feels kinda nice. Not for the enemy team, but for you, I mean. Now say you've conquered the low elos and you sit upon a golden throne, you finally get to wear the victorious Aatrox skin. Well, you don't have to, but the one this year might be better, right? I hope, please, right? But nevertheless, you're in gold and you finally made it. So the roles in terms of impact here are mid, jungle, top, ADC, and then support. Mid is overtaken jungle, and ADC is overtaken support. It's a very interesting shift, and the reason is because the more knowledge people have from silver and the more ability they have, the more level parity you have in the early game. People are not ignoring objectives as much. You're having more battles about what to get, and so there's a split in terms of those early game leads. As such, ADCs get better because the games go longer. The games are longer because teams are starting to learn how to get those objectives. I can tell you when you play jungle in gold and platinum, there's definitely more of a contest over those sneaky dragons. There's more of a contest over the heralds. You're not just going to get 4 free ones like you could do in iron, bronze, and silver. And because teams go back and forth on who actually wins the early game and it can quite often be very neutral, a must-know aspect of League comes up and it's very obvious, and you can actually see it from space, and that's that teams cannot close out games. Both teams can be very good at getting leads and, taking control of the mid game, but essentially once you've taken all those inner towers, everyone just kind of wanders around thinking, okay, now what? What's a 1-3-1? What's a 0-4-1? Do we take an inhib? Do we not take an inhib? When do we do Baron? Do we sneak the Baron? Where's the enemy jungler? Ah, he's a higher level. All these questions start to rain down in their heads, and there's just this level of uncertainty. As such, ADCs get better, because you get to auto attack and do damage. But also an ADC's effectiveness is just growing now, because they have a better champion pool, their mechanical ability is improving, and so they're more useful than supports in general. Mid laners have overtaken jungle because they are much better at understanding roaming. They're simply the best role for map impact. It's simple geography. Mid lane close to dragon, mid lane close to scuttle, mid lane close to jungle invades, mid lane close to herald, mid lane closer to everything. So once you know how to win lane and you understand how jungle roams, this is when the impact starts to be felt, because junglers again take a little bit of a step back. This is because once lane priority becomes a thing and once mid laners start to understand what a jungler is, it means the jungler must pay attention when they're invading. It means they must pay attention to where the mid lane is at all times, and that's another level that they have to learn before they become better players. But because of the mid laner's understanding of the game, again it takes over. Top laners, please shed no tears tonight. You still win a good amount of games in gold if you play the right things. Bruises normally actually. High health, don't get punished as much. Obnoxious items, dangerous when you have a huge lead. Split push ability, team fight ability, and the fact that you can play Mordekai's and simply ult the ADC and then win the game. Or ult the jungler so that your jungler can steal the Baron. But the point is, you have impact, you win games in this MMR range, and now we're almost into the top 80% of players. But however, let's go to Platinum before we continue that thought process, because the goal, of course, as we said, is Diamond. Platinum really is the entry level. It's where you become the better player and you need to learn a lot and adapt a lot in order to make that final push. As such, mid lane, support, jungle, ADC, and top drops all the way down to the bottom. That's right, support actually overtakes jungle in comparison to Diamond. And I've said this on stream many times, but when VOD reviewing, when playing, when experiencing in any way Platinum MMR, it is absolutely one of my most frustrating for junglers. Because mid laners understand things now and the rest of the laners are starting to develop sentience, your ganks aren't always going to be free. They're going to occasionally use a ward and you're going to be detected, and when you are, you're going to be counter-jungled. Maybe you lose a dragon and maybe the guy ganks on the other side of the map. In addition, while you may be a good jungler, in Diamond Plus and Master Plus, when you give a laner a lead, they know how to use it, well, most of the time and depending on the server. But in Platinum, you go gank a lane 2-3 times, you camp it, you give them a lead, they actually don't know how to use it sometimes and they end up losing it and throwing it. So you spend all that time investing into your top laner, into your mid lane, into your bottom lane, and then you look and they went from 3-0 to 3-4. So your lead has disappeared into the night, much like ZZ Rot. The reason support has gone above it is because, yes, while you have the same kind of problem when you roam, you can impact and win the bot lane much harder. And that's why the ADC has gone down, because as a support you have more control over the lane, And once you do, your ADC, who is a better player now than he was in gold, silver, bronze, means that you know to go knock those tower plates, means you know how to actually use the wave, to freeze it, to push it, to win the 2v2 trades. And when you have good vision as a good support, you can defend yourself against all kinds of ganks, except the Soraka ultimate from top lane saving the enemy bottom lane gank. We don't like that very much. But at least we don't have to actually lane Versa in the bottom lane now, right? But in essence, once you've won that bottom lane harder, and as the better support you should be able to do so, people begin to understand how to use that to get dragons, heralds, and rotate the map to get more plates, to get more towers. You don't really see it prior to this, they sort of just repeatedly go bottom lane. Platinum is when you begin to see bottom laners have better macro. And this is why top lane can suck. Here's the epiphany. Because bottom lane can start to snowball much harder. Once you take that tower, win the lane, and get the dragon, what's the next objective? Well, might as well move to the mid lane, or might as well move to the top lane. Now you effectively displace your top laner. And the thing is, in this MMR range, they don't understand that if you shove the bottom lane up, and then the enemy bottom lane freezes it on their tower, what exactly do you want your top laner to do? You've just denied him an entire lane of experience points and stifled everything he's trying to do. Now this is much better than it used to be before tower plates. It was really bad before. However, now because dragons are so important and because getting those early leads are very important, if you have a rough time on the top lane and you're not exactly winning and the rest of the map gets away from you, you just end up losing impact because you don't have a place within the greater scheme of the game. So obviously as games end from a snowball more often than in gold games in terms of average game time, and jungler can really still have that impact, as a top laner you must take it upon yourself to win your lane. That's the most important thing. If you're going to lose your lane, you cannot blame it on not having ganks. Yes, it would be nice, but the idea would be to pick something that can win the lane and let you help your jungle get the herald. Let you actually invade the red buff of the enemy jungle. Let you go to the mid lane and conduct a gank of your own. Perhaps you're Jax and you have a very good split push component. If you're playing a tank, guys, save that TP, use it for a dragon fight. Use it for a bottom lane fight if your bottom lane doesn't have a lead. The point is, as you go up through the MMRs from Iron all the way up to Diamond, you see the roles have differing level of effects as different roles and different players learn certain aspects about their role and about the game. The most important thing that you can control though is what you do. Make sure you are winning your role and understand which roles have more impact in certain MMRs and either switch to it or understand that you need to play a certain way in order to defeat it. Regardless, I hope this video gave you some perspective and understanding of why roles do better in certain MMRs than others. Maybe comment below your rank and what role you play and what you actually think about it. Let us know if we hit the nail on the head or if we, missed the wall completely and went straight into our thumb. Please do also consider liking the video if you did enjoy it and consider subscribing to support all the Mobalytics content that's coming your way very soon. I have been your host Virakayu, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.